We have got Rebone Tau, who's in studio with us. You've been with us throughout the weekend, kind of just analysing what we have seen. And before we go into the nitty-gritties of the developments with the top 6 and everything else around it, one would have thought, and I don't know if you share the same sentiment, but one would have thought that the kind of delay we're seeing with the nomination of with the additional members is not something that you would have wanted to see within the Youth League. It's certainly something that they've carried on from the mother body, and that lack of efficiency seemingly could be a problem that carries through the entire organization into the youth body as we're seeing this afternoon.
Thank you, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. I think one must start by saying the Youth League has been on a rebuilding process for a decade. Because in 2013, when the first task team was appointed, the ANC said it's a rebuilding process of the Youth League. Now, in a rebuilding process, you would expect to see a different kind of a Youth League, especially after a decade, in terms of the caliber of comrades within the Youth League on how they do things, because a rebuilding process is not about just having 2,500 branches, that have been launched in the country, but also the professionalism that they lack as young people. Because, I mean, if you look at the youth age, right, let's say maybe from 20 to 35, you've got young people already who are working at the age of 20, and these people are like professionals, you need to do things in a particular manner, you need to be punctual when you go to work. If they can't handle their own business as the Youth League, how do they expect to represent the youth of South Africa?
Yeah, that's a very good point that you raised there. And it just leads me to the arguments that have been brought up about the newly elected President, Colin Malachi, and his likeness to Julius Malema. In fact, the slate that he was standing on was economic freedom or death, which is very similar to what as Julius Malema would have contended. And it's something that not necessarily a Cyril Ramaphosa slate would have gone for. Your thoughts on his presidency within the Youth League, but also on the values that he stands on, not necessarily fitting in, whether it be language-wise or whatever it may be, into what the Cyril slate may believe in?
Fine, he's been elected as the president of the Youth League. When you speak to young people, and I remember days building up to this Congress, just trying to get a sense who are they likely to support. Many raised concern, and for the longest time we did not even know that Colin Malachi is a member of parliament, because he's seen not to be active as a young person. But and I think it cuts across, most parliamentarians. I mean, if you look at even some from the Fees Must Fall, within the ANC, you don't see much, of that robust, that they show that indeed there are young people championing interest of young people as young parliamentarians. So there's been those criticism by his peers on him as a young parliamentarian, and now he is coming to lead the Youth League as the president. I mean, he's someone that has led the Youth League as the president of COSAS, and we know that Julius Malema also is a former president of COSAS. But I don't know if he has the capacity with the challenges that they face themselves as the Youth League. I can tell you I've been talking to some of the delegates right now about this nomination process. They are saying there's serious infights within his own faction. I've looked at some of the names on those on their slate. Yeah. They've dropped some of their people. Okay. So already, they've not even concluded. They're already fighting amongst each other. So as a president, his own faction now is divided. He is not able to unite them.
Before he leads the actual organization.
Yeah. People are angry. People are writing on social media how these politics are not fair and so forth. So it's very interesting. But he's gonna find it very difficult if he does not remove himself from ANC factional politics and focus on really championing interest of young people.
And I suppose that's been the sore point for the ANC, is that they cannot remove themselves for the infighting and the politics within the party that happen. And we're seeing this now before he even takes the reins as the Youth League president. And so when they say they want to see an active Youth League and they want to be building branches, how does he even begin to do that when we're already seeing what is happening now? But when you're also seeing Fikile Mbalula yesterday indicating that we won't tolerate anybody who colors outside of the lines. You and I spoke about the autonomy of the Youth League yesterday, and you indicated that there's no such thing as long as they draw on their being from the mother body. So how do they begin to be an organization on their own with the infighting that's currently happening as we speak, but also them still being attached to the mother body at the umbilical cord?
I think firstly, how yesterday concluded in the evening, if indeed these young people at this Congress are true revolutionaries, they could have told the ANC to stop with the nomination for the leadership position, and I'll tell you why. As they conclude this Congress, something foreign that happened yesterday has never happened in the history of the Youth League, was to go and nominate officials without discussing the organizational report. None of these young people stood up and told the ANC, can you allow us to reflect on the status of the Youth League? Because the last time the status of the Youth League was looked at the National Congress was in 2015, 8 years ago. Up to now, no one knows. Even delegates don't have a copy of the organizational report. So no one knows what is the real status of the Youth League at this present moment. And they allowed themselves to be voted without that. Secondly, the financial status of the Youth League. We know in the past there were issues that they didn't pay for this and that. And there were also campaigns under the leadership of Tutu Zuma, in terms of fundraising. And when you look at the work that she has been doing, she was not given an opportunity to go and deliver the Treasury's report to Congress and account for what they have been able to fundraise and how much they have spent and how much does the Youth League have. So that, for those young people to just clap hands and say, we're here to just vote, we're okay, that shows you that the Youth League is not going to come back different from what it has been for the past few years.
I worry, though, with all that you and I have just unpacked over the last few minutes, that when President Cyril Ramaphosa does eventually address them at the end of the conference, he won't acknowledge issues of this nature, which, by the way, one would argue are at the center of the mother body's demise at the moment. Do you reckon that he might, or am I right in assuming that he will just kind of dig his head in the sand with these prevalent issues that not only exist within the mother body, but now are prevailing in the ANC Youth League?
I think he'll be the president that will just talk of what is expected, of the Youth League, that they go into elections, they must campaign for the ANC, and not really say the uncomfortable things to them. To that, you have been sitting here for 3 days.
Yeah.
You have not gone to commissions. Today, this evening, definitely, they're going back to their respective provinces. They have never discussed anything. They don't even have a mandate from their own respective branches on the things that they were supposed to discuss, because discussion documents were released after the BGM cutoff date. This is a reflection of this outgoing entity that Colin Malachi was part of, and some in his collective were part of this task team, and they have just allowed themselves to come and vote and go home and to be elected.
So I ask you again, now that we've seen what has developed, the top 6 being elected, the nomination process happening on the floor, and I think these are live visuals that we are sharing with our viewers at the moment. But is there a relevance for the Youth League in 2023, especially after we've seen what's happened in how they have dealt with the conference this weekend?
The Youth League remained relevant.
Yeah.
And I think the day that some within the ANC start to appreciate that, because the problems of the Youth League were brought by the ANC, because the ANC, some leaders are so self-centered that they use the Youth League as a pawn in their games or in their political factional battles. Because if you look at in South Africa, majority of the population is young people, that voice is needed, and that's why the EFF is able to survive, because the EFF, you must remember, that is the real youth league, as some have argued, that
yes.
that Julius left with the youth league and is able to speak to young people, directly, and that's why we continue to see the growth of the EFF as they now prepare for their 10-year anniversary, since the formation of the EFF. So the youth league needs to be strong. The youth league needs to be ANC leaders. And he said that some of these leaders who are interfering in youth league affairs are former leaders themselves of the youth league. Yes. They don't want to let go. I was even making a joke the other day to someone and say, probably they should actually amend the constitution to 65 years so that they can allow them to come back and lead the youth league and stop wanting to lead through back doors,
Yeah. And I mean, just based on that, as a final or a concluding remark on our discussion, the top six, we've got Colin Malachi as the president, deputy president Phumzile Mgina, secretary general. We've got the deputy secretary general. We've got the second deputy secretary general, and we've also got the treasurer that's out now. Do you think they're fit for purpose?
I've tried to call around, and ask. And the problem is that when you speak to someone, they will criticize this candidate. The other person is like, no, they're good, So for me to really come to a conclusion, I think let's give them a chance. They will prove themselves if they're indeed fit for purpose to lead the youth league at the level that they're leading it, especially when the youth league is...
I suppose it's also starting from a low base. There's been nothing for the past 8 years when it comes to leadership.
But we measure them with the Lembede generation.
Yeah.
But as things stand, I'm not sure, because that generation of Lembede would have not even allowed to be elected without discussion documents. Because that generation was a generation, that was very, when it came to reading, they loved reading, writing documents, That's the kind of youth league that we need today. The youth league not of just slogans. We need a youth league that is going to be practical, because the challenges need people to be practical.
Yeah, so you would agree with the guest that Moloko had a little bit earlier on, saying that we need young professionals who are at the top seats of the ANC Youth League. So top six, but also the additional National Executive Committee to be young professionals who have got higher education qualifications, or does that not necessarily matter?
It doesn't matter. Biggest mistake, if you look at most of these young professionals, when they go in, they want to go to parliament.
Yeah.
None of them want to serve in the respective or work in the sector, that they studied for, or the industry. That is the biggest problem. Why is it that everyone wants to go to parliament? Why is it that? Because how do you transform society? It's through working in that sector or the industry that you are in, and able to then bring new ideas, and also bounce things with your peers, and say, in my industry or in my sector, these are the challenges. But if you're not there, you just want to go and a salary and of being a parliamentarian. And as I was saying that, right now you've got the list process that's coming up, and that's why the ANC made it clear to all the leagues that the cutoff date for all the conferences should be 31st of July, because now they're going to the elections mode. But being a professional does not mean that also you're an activist. You can be just a professional, but not being the activism. So you need a balance of both, because the generation of Lembede, yes, they were professionals, but they were activists. Yeah. That's why they were able to change the ANC and the character of the ANC to becoming a mass organization. And without being an activist, then who are you representing?
That's a very good point. And I have to ask you about the bravado-ness or the arrogance that the ANC carries with it, to be like, we are the ones that brought you freedom or democracy in South Africa, therefore we deserve to be in this space. I'm thinking that's probably not a sentiment that the ANC Youth League should be carrying into the future, given the generations that have passed since.
Absolutely. When I speak to young people, and not within politics, but young people in society, they always say to me, we appreciate the role that the ANC has played to bring us this freedom, but we don't need freedom. Freedom is not going to change our lives.
We've got it, yeah.
We've got it. We need change, and that's why we are seeing this decline, and it's because they are so inward-looking. I was saying the other day to someone, you've got what we call mapanya, those police that are helping, with the safety in communities. And I'm like, okay, we're told that you find them in the township, But is the ANC aware that they're neglecting a middle class that they say they created? Now, this middle class does not live in the township. Most of them live in the suburban areas. What are the challenges there? Street lights not working, potholes not working, crime. So these are low-hanging fruits.
Basics, yes.
These people don't want tenders, don't want your projects there. They're just saying, can we have street lights working? You know, the other day I was driving
Can we have water?
Exactly, you know, so that's what you need, a youth league that can understand and tell the mother body that, yes, you are focusing on the townships, but also there's also this sector that you're also living. But the result of the matter, young people in general don't feel that they owe the ANC that much, and that's why there's been this decline in terms of the voter turnout, young people not going out to register, not going out to vote if those that are registered. And that's why that you are seeing the growth of parties like Patriotic Alliance, you know, Action SA, you know, and it's not
Build
because...
One South Africa by Musima Mane.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And Rise Mzansi now that we're seeing that is coming up. So it will be very, I think, interesting elections this.
Yeah, they will be very interesting, and I'm sure you'll be with us to unpack those developments as they happen. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. That is Rebone Tau, who is a political analyst, who's joined us to unpack the latest developments of this particular ANC Youth League Conference, leadership elected after 8 years. And of course, we are expecting President Cyril Ramaphosa to wrap up those proceedings after the nominations of the National Executive Committee is nominated from the floor. That nomination process currently underway. You saw earlier on with Moloko Moloto.